Good morning, everyone. In case you haven't noticed, it is positively Baltic lately. It's been a bit chilly, and the Humane Society recommends that you bring your animals inside, or if they are an outside animal, that at least you provide them with some shelter from the wind and some hay so that they have something to get them off the cold ground. But that gets you to thinking, what is hay? What is straw? What's the difference between the two? Well, today, Doug Chapel is here to describe us the difference between hay and straw. And he has an experience because he has an agricultural background, grew up on a farm. This is going to be part of his project number 2, Organize Your Speech. So things to pay attention to for project number 2 will be, does it have a solid opening? Does it have a body with a main point? Does it have a strong conclusion? And does it have appropriate transitions between those sections? In addition, Doug has some personal goals. Although he is using notes, just like me, he's going to try and make eye contact with the audience and also speak with confidence and have a well-paced delivery. Timer, this is a 5 to 7 minute speech, so please show the green at 5, yellow at 6, red at 7. Now, Doug, please come to the lectern and enlighten us about the difference between hay and straw.
Thank you. And thank you, Van, for warming up the crowd. I appreciate it. Excellently done. Well, when the weather outside is as cold as the Baltic region of Scandinavia and Western Russia, I often think of my favorite season, which is the fall. And I like the fall because of all the great fall traditions that there are. And every fall, many people enjoy lots of traditional activities like bonfires, going to corn mazes and apple orchards, and, most importantly, going on hay rides. Alas, the hay ride is one of the great misnomers of our time, because they typically don't consist of any hay at all. No, the typical twine-bound seat upon the autumn wagon is straw. Maybe that's how Robert Burns would say it poetically. Some people may think that making this distinction is me, the farm kid, just being nitpicky. But other than hay and straw both being an agricultural product that you bale, they really couldn't be much more different. The 3 main differences that I'll highlight here are they come from different plant sources, they have different uses, and they have pretty different values as commodities. Well, the first question that we might ask when we're talking about the different plant sources are, what are those plant sources? What is hay? Well, hay essentially is it's the primary use of a plant, and it's something that you cut while it's still green in the field before it's ripe. On the other hand, straw is the secondary use of a plant. It's what's left over after you have harvested ripe grain in the field. So hay is usually going to consist of plants like alfalfa and clover. Those are 2 very popular ones in this region, but really any kind of grass would work as hay. Anything that you can cut while it's green, and anything that in most cases will continue to grow back, so that you can continue harvesting it multiple times in a year, and in many cases for many years. Think of it as being like your lawn. You cut your grass while it's green and it grows back, and it keeps growing back essentially indefinitely. The straw, on the other hand, since it consists of the stalks that are left over after you've already harvested the grain, that's going to come from grain crops like wheat, oats, barley is something that you might use. Anything that's got, a thin stalk, if you know what straw looks like, where after you've harvested the seeds of the grain, you can bale up that byproduct that's left over on the ground. But since that's how you're doing it, you're only going to bale a field of straw one time, and one time only. Well, since hay and straw are in fact very different things, they have very different uses, which is my Second point, hay is used for feed. The primary use of hay is to feed your livestock. If it's harvested properly, it has a high nutritional value for cattle, horses, hogs, sheep, really anything. Goats would be one that you could include in there. Now the nutritional value of it is dependent on which exact plant you use, and huge, books and books have been written about which plants are best for different animals, and I won't go into that, but a key thing is that no matter what, it has to be baled up while it's fairly dry. If it's wet, it will mold, and the nutritional value will greatly deteriorate. Straw, on the other hand, while some animals could eat it, it does not make a very good feed, because all the nutritional value in those plants comes from the grain that I mentioned earlier, you've already harvested. So your primary uses for straw are as a bedding, and if you were trying to keep your pets warm somehow in a dog house outdoors, for example, straw would be what you'd probably be using for that. It's also useful as mulch in a garden, useful as just a nice fall decoration, useful to set up the seats on a wagon for a hayride, as I mentioned earlier. Straw is almost always a lot lighter than hay is, and it's very springy, which makes it a better source of bedding. And in fact, at various points in history, straw was used pretty commonly for human bedding as well, before modern mattresses became more common. Sorry, the light just distracted me there. Anyway, since you're not feeding straw, the quality of it isn't quite as critical. You wouldn't want it to be wet and moldy when you bale it, because it wouldn't be useful at all, but less important than it is for hay. Since the two products have very different applications, they have very different values as cash crops. Since hay is an essential component, really, of a large part of the livestock industry, there are a lot of farmers. Anyone who's raising animals is going to be dependent on having enough hay. So they will have to pay whatever the market price is for it, and that tends to drive the prices up. Straw, on the other hand, is not really essential. You'd like to have it, but you don't need it, and since it's just a byproduct of some other far more valuable cash crop, it tends to be more of a buyer's market. If you're selling straw, you'll sell it at ultimately at whatever price you can get for it, just to be rid of it. Or you might just even leave it in the field and not do anything with it. So that tends to drive the prices of straw down, hence the third difference. So again, to recap, the three major ways that hay and straw are different, as I've covered, are they come from different plant sources, one green in the field, one ripe grain. They have different applications, one for feed and one for bedding and other sort of secondary uses. And because of those things, they have much different values on the open market. So now you know. Mr. Toastmaster, thank you. And that is my speech.